Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, Dawson County Board of Commissioners voting session. Today is Thursday, December the 17th, 2020. We appreciate your attendance, both in person and those that are with us online. We'll start out with a roll call. And as you can see, only 3 of us are here today. The ladies that are on the commission were unable to be with us this afternoon, and we wish them well. All right, ask everyone to please stand for brief invocation and pledge. If you would bow your heads, please. Our dear gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this another day and for the many blessings of life. We ask that you would touch those that are feeling sickly today, Lord, and give them strength. Lord, we ask for knowledge and wisdom that we might carry out the business of this community. Anything that's accomplished, we'll give you the honor and glory. For it's in Christ's name we do ask and pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Next, we'll move on to announcements. Does the board have any announcements? I will make an announcement that our next scheduled Board of Commissioner meeting is January 21st, 2021. No other announcements. We'll move on to the approval of minutes. First up, we have the minutes of the work session held on December 3rd, 2020. Any additions or deletions? Motions.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Satterfield.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Gaines. Discussion. Hearing none, please vote. And those are approved 3-0. Next up, we have the minutes of the voting session held on December 3rd, 2020. Any additions or deletions? Motions.
Make a motion to approve as presented.
Motion by Commissioner Gaines,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Satterfield. Discussion. Hearing none, please vote. And those are approved 3-0. Next up, we have the approval of the agenda. I do have some changes to the agenda. We'll have addition of number 7 under new business. That's the Legacy Link Addendum 1 contract. Addition C under number 5 under new business, board appointments for Park and Rec. And D under number 5 in new business, board appointments to the Development Authority. I'll entertain a motion with those changes.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Motion by Commissioner Gaines,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Satterfield. Discussion. Hearing none, please vote. And the agenda is approved with those changes. We move on up to public comment. Anyone sign up for public comment in this section?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. We move on down to zoning. First up, we have ZA 2008, Fox Creek Properties request to rezone tax map parcel 112-109, 104-065, 112-019, 112-013, 113-057-002, and 112-018 from RA Residential Agriculture, RPC Residential Planned Community, CHB Commercial Highway Business, CPCD Commercial Planned Community Development, COI, Commercial Office Institution, to mixed-use village for the purpose of developing single-family, multifamily, retail, commercial, office, hotel, and light industrial uses. Location, Georgia 400 and Lumpkin Campground Road. Before we get started with that, I'll go over the rules that are associated with our zoning process. First up, the planning director will present the application and the recommendation of the Planning Commission. Then we will hear from the applicant. Then I will open the hearing. We'll hear from those who are in favor of the application. We will hear from those who are opposed to the application. Each person wishing to speak in that public hearing will be allotted 3 minutes per our zoning guidelines. Anyone who speaks will need to sign in and give us your name and address. And also, if anyone has donated $250 or more to any candidate, you will need to fill out a form stating so, only if you have donated $250 or more to any candidate. So those are the rules that we'll go by. So, Jameson.
Thank you, Chairman. Fox Creek Properties is seeking to rezone a little over 500 acres at the corner of Lumpkin Campground Road and Highway 400. This is the third time in the past 2 years that the board has heard this request of this nature in regards to this property in some sort of variation. When looking at mixed-use village classification, the first go-round, we really try to examine 7 different criteria. The first is the proposed uses. Looking at the site plan in your packet, keeping the proposed light industrial and retail at the front of the development near Highway 400 goes with the general character of our, as we look forward to the growth in our 400 corridor. Number 2, we look at the units per acre. This site plan has 288 multifamily units, 375,000 square foot of industrial office space, 639 single family lots, which comes to a total density of 1.77 units per acre. The third thing we look at is the designated areas of use. And in your site plan, you can see different pods as to where they designate each of these different areas and how this land is to be developed. Number 4, we look at open space, amenities, road system, and access points. They added an additional entrance to the development was added because of the fire department and subdivision regulations for an additional access to the back part of this property since the original application. Further discussion regarding roads will also be required when we start getting into more details with the development, because part of the access is along GDOT's right of way. And anytime we do that, we have to confer with GDOT. 257 acres or 49.2% of this will remain in open space. The requirement for mixed use village is 30%. So it more than exceeds the open space requirement. 3 separate amenity areas are associated with 3 separate residential portions of this development. So the 5th thing we look at is the location of wetlands and streams. This site plan does a great job of mitigating the stream crossings, and it doesn't go near the wetlands or the stream buffers like along the Etowah that we so often talk about trying to protect. So mitigating the stream crossings is extremely important when developing a size of 500 plus acres. Number 6, it's the designation of private and public streets, and I think that's not actually laid out in this this concept plan, but it's something that we will discuss moving forward. And the name 7th is just the name of the development, which ultimately this is called Etowah Bluffs. Comparing the current zoning to the proposed zoning, and as far as densities, the current zoning was designed to be the Southern Catholic College. It was designed to be a college with dorms and faculties. Commercial office institutional, as per set out in the previous ZA 0014, was designed to house about 3,000 people. Trying to take that apples to apples with the density of this, it's kind of hard to do because, that's including the student dorms, the faculty housing and things like that. Residential plan community was 81. It was approved at 81 units. CPCD was approved at 300 units at 6 units per acre. And that's a little 50-acre portion of what the chairman said was a part of this. So you're really looking at around 3 units an acre of what is currently zoned to be on this property or combined properties. But mixed use village is defined in our comprehensive plan as a live, work, play community that is centered around a village center with civic open space. The most important idea of mixed use village is the idea of public space, which is accessible by walking or bike paths. There's feathers density around the surrounding center. Mixed use villages should be a balance of jobs, housing, and a creative planned community with corner stores, specialty boutiques, and small grocers. It's the opinion of the planning department that this plan does a good job providing an environmentally friendly concept while checking the boxes of the requirements of the mixed-use village zoning classification. However, at its core, it doesn't really provide that village center as described in our comprehensive plan as that live, work, play community. The Planning Commission recommended approval of this request with a stipulation for the applicant to work with staff in regards to a timeline for the development of the industrial in conjunction with the residential, so the residential would not be developed without some type of commercial. Since then, the applicant has emailed us with a request to withdraw this application without prejudice. And I will let the applicant explain that more. But at this time, I'll entertain any questions.
Questions for Jameson?
Just high level, you mentioned that the way it's zoned now is essentially 3 units an acre density, and it's hodgepodge with multiple zonings. So from a planning perspective, by doing this, my understanding, I'm not a planning guy, but it allows your department more control over how it flows and things like that versus individual parcels.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Mixed use village is essentially, we require 500 minimum acres to be in for mixed use village concept. The first go around, the first time through is really more of the concept plan where we kind of look at what the general layouts are. And that's why you see the different pods in this concept plan. But the second go around is when we get into like the grits of what the facades look like, how are the roads going to interact with each other? What, we get into more of the meat and potatoes portions of it to where we see this village center kind of grow, and the residential kind of provides that live, work, play community.
But even though there's a second step to the approval process, we still want to see, to your point, still to fit that real, what we're going, the idea of a village there is the reason why you're saying we want to see it more as a more solidified plan.
Absolutely. Yes.
Other questions for Jameson? Thanks, sir. We may have some more later. Is the applicant present? Come on up.
Sign in.
Please.
It's Kenneth Wood, 350 Research Court, Peachtree Corners, Georgia. So we came before the Planning Commission several times, and we've refined the plan multiple times, probably about 10 different iterations that we've gone through on the plan. And kind of some of the most recent ones I wanted to kind of bring up, and then I'll walk you guys through what we're envisioning to do and the reason for the withdrawal. So we changed. We first started off where we had the multifamily further up here, and then we started looking at, in conjunction with talking to the Development Authority about greater needs for light industrial and some other uses. So we brought in about a 50-acre pod that would have commercial, potential hotels, a fire department land that could be there, and then the light industrial, and shifted the multifamily over. And then we got into, at the last meeting, second to last meeting, before the approval, there were some neighbors that had come up about buffering. And so we found the closest neighbors on our west. And at the time we had 90 feet and 100 feet on the side. And then since then, we've moved and lost density on the residential to make this about 250 feet. So more than double the buffer up against the houses that were here inside the subdivision that's there on the west. And that occurs on the larger plan at this location here. And so really, I can kind of think where we are now is, we know we have the right zoning, and talking to, staff, and they've been done an amazing job with the mixed use village. We know we can come up with even a more creative plan. We've already got some ideas of what we've done in some different developments down in Forsyth to bring in the commercial, have more of a green space and a community area. We talked about how do you situate a potential fire station site. And then how can we potentially look at shifting the residential more and even coming in and making even this entire area so that you could transition from light industrial to like a medical office and some other uses that we've heard from the development authority that are up here. And then even with concurrency and coming up with a way to have a concurrent zoning so that you guys know you're getting the commercial at the same time as the residential. And so we know we can do that, but we said we couldn't really stand up and say, well, if you could do a 30-day deferral or 60, and we just weren't sure about that. And so we just said, let us withdraw, let us keep working with the development authority. We're working on the sewer situation right now, which is a very complex issue, and it could take, it could only be 45 days, but it could be 90. And so we didn't want to misrepresent and say, defer us a little bit more. So we were saying, let us withdraw if you guys will, and then let us come back and meet with you guys before we file and make sure we have the right plan, and then come back. And then that way we have a plan that everybody can be happy with and move forward at that point. And so our request for withdrawal comes from that. We didn't want to request a bunch more deferrals. We think we can do the meetings with staff and with the development authority and everyone else and figure out the right plan moving forward, because we feel like we have the right zoning and we know the right pieces, but with such a big property, it's just going to take a little while to line everything up.
Questions for the applicant?
Is that a 250-foot undisturbed buffer around those homes?
That is correct. That is correct.
And that's.
It is. So on the plan that occurs, we had some of the residents come up from this subdivision that were here.
Okay.
And so we lost the units here and pushed the residential further away from that. That was the only place where the residential came close
Is
to
that Savannah
anybody.
Trace?
And so we pushed it up
Yeah.
there.
That's Savannah Trace. Okay.
Yes, that's right. Savannah Trace.
Okay.
That is correct. And so we moved it out of there. And then since then, we've just been going through on the commercial, trying to get it right. And that's where we want to just make sure we get it right.
Yeah, I mean, this piece of property has been back and forth 100 times. I think getting it right is the first step. So, I'm not willing to move forward on anything that I'm not seeing a clear picture of what the future looks
Sure.
like. We make decisions based on a lot of different factors, but with it being ambiguous, then we need more information,
Yeah, absolutely.
and the public needs more information.
Other questions of the applicant? In reference to their, just for procedure, so everyone understands the procedure, the board will take up their request after the public hearing of whether they're going to grant their request for it to be withdrawn. It has been our process that once we've advertised and you fall within our 10-day guideline, that we go ahead and have our hearing. But if the board was to make that decision at that particular time to allow the withdrawal, that means that they would basically be back at square one. They would come back with a new application, go back before the planning commission, and then back before the Board of Commissioners. But that's yet to be decided. So thank you, sir. We may have some more questions for you later. With that being said, I'll open the hearing. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the application? Anyone here speak in favor of the application? Okay, anyone here to speak in opposition to the application? Come on up. Give us your name and your address, and please sign in. You'll have 3 minutes from the time you start.
My name is Bill Miner. I can only do one thing at a time.
That's all right. A lot of us in that boat.
My property is in the Gates of Etowah subdivision, and I understand that this is not going to directly abut my property. And I know there have been several iterations of this, and I'm not quite sure where it stands right now. The drawings that I could find on site aren't, I suspect, what the gentleman is showing right now. I just have one quick question, and that is, I heard a quick comment about another access for this development. Was that going to be on Highway 53?
It's in another access to internalize, so it was not out to the highway.
Okay, so there will not be any ingress or egress off of Highway 53,
Back here,
anywhere on Highway 53?
Just need to address the board.
Anywhere on Highway 53, is there any ingress or egress on Highway
We
53?
can ask him when he can bring them back.
Yeah, I mean, based on his plan today, it doesn't appear to be that way, but obviously they're talking about going back and redoing it. So that would give us another opportunity to revisit that with a new plan that may come forward.
Okay, so I'm just curious how it worked because I thought that that's a Georgia highway. And I thought the deceleration was 150 feet and acceleration was something like 75 feet, and that's going to really be tight. That's just one little comment.
Well, anything, just address that, anything that would be on a state highway would be something DOT would have to deal with. It wouldn't be something the county would approve. That would be a DOT portion of a particular zone.
So then we would need to get the DOT involved in that.
They would have to.
They would.
So from your perspective, you would prefer not to have access on 53 is what I'm hearing you say.
So I can't get out of my subdivision now.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here to speak in opposition to the application? Come on up, give us your name and your address. You will have 3 minutes.
My name is Bruce Dunsel, 805 Lula Garrett Road. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, we support the withdrawal of this application for a number of reasons and look forward to its eventual disapproval. We appreciate the fact that they are focused on bringing in work. Proposed retail space and hotels typically bring in low-income jobs. People who make minimum wage can't even afford to live here. More retail space also crowds out other retail space already existing and overcrowds that commodity, threatening more vacancies. Such establishments also force competition on local businesses, which are already hard hit. Neither one of these things are really pushing light industry, which is the engine that drives the economic growth. And as you're aware, most cases, communities are forced to give away significant tax benefits in order to invite other businesses here. So approval of these kinds of projects really are not a plan to fail. They're more a step in an active direction to failure. Also, these types of proposals deepen a tax hole we seem never to be able to get out of. Case in point being the ladder truck that was just approved is years behind schedule in terms of being able to support suppression and rescue from high-rise buildings that have already been approved and many already constructed. This places us behind the 8 ball in terms of always having to come up with the next SPLOST, always having to come up with further property increases to buy the equipment and to pay salaries and staff. So this is really not management, it's oppression. These kinds of proposals are all wrong for Dawson County. Subdivisions like this would cram a lot of people into a small amount of space, very high density housing. The high cost housing is going to do nothing to reduce the gap between the high cost of living here and the medium wage in Dawson, which is already very low. Also, the high price rentals had flooded an already bloating market. You see rentals going up everywhere around 400. So this is a perpetual commitment that in terms of the green space that's being proposed, 30% of 500 acres, about 150 acres in perpetual green space with public access. No HOA is going to take on that responsibility willingly. People moving into that are either going to be very unwary or going to be very surprised at the bill that is attached to their property. And this is a commitment that I want to make sure that no Dawson County citizen ever has to bear. Disapproval would also remove a number of issues and address the fact that population growth and turning farmland into unsustainable concrete and asphalt is not economic development. DeKalb, Gwinnett, other places have found that urbanization is nothing but a guarantee for long-term blight. Population growth is not inevitable. Approval of these types of projects would
Sir.
do nothing more than build it
Sir.
and come up with an inevitable mass migration.
Your 3 minutes are up.
All right, so we're looking for disapproval. That would send a strong message here and uphold and defend our God-given rights and elect that you were
Thank you.
elected for and not be sold out. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else here to speak in opposition to the application? Come on up and give us your name and your address, and you will have 3 minutes.
I'm Hugh Stowers Jr. I reside 800 Hugh Stowers Road, Dawsonville, Georgia. I had a presentation here that I thought I needed to present, but as I look back at the history of Dawson County, I think it's worthless. I have had a severe blood pressure problem. I love this county, and it's dying. You're going to kill it, no matter what I say. You're gonna put them people up there above the river where the only water supply is got, and water is gold. If you don't believe that, just pull up to a station and get a bottle of water, get that same amount of gas. See which one you pay the most for. You pay twice as much for the bottle of water than you will the gas. So you're not gonna keep people out of that river. Just that simple. They've got a 50-foot border, and there's something in man's brain that wants to be near water anyway. So you go ahead and stick up 1,500, 1,700 houses down there next to the river in the floodplain part of it anyway. But that's all right. And I give up so much after I see the city of Dawsonville coming in here and giving the Turner boys 40 acres over there across from the headquarters of Emergency Center. But they don't have enough vision to see that they got 400 acres they can keep going. So that's what you got to look forward to. I've got 4 grandchildren. Want me to help them find land to come back to Dawson County? I will not do it. I don't want them here. So y'all go ahead and make these rooftops. You're not doing anything to protect existing citizens to start with. Your first and foremost obligation is to preserve the quality and the safety of the citizens. But the citizens are already here. We'll never know how much it costs the taxpayers to put in Kroger's and Publix over there. I mean, all the mumbo jumbo and all of is all our money, because the government has no money. The only money it gets is from the people. And people like me at 80 years old don't have that much to give away anyway. And you're going to destroy all of us, but that's all right. My time will be to check out. So go ahead. You're not going to see the developer do anything to help the people. They're going to give you 3 acres for a fire station. Whoop-de-doo. So let's say that's $1 million an acre. All right, $1 million an acre for 3 acres. It's going to cost you $3 million or $6 million to make it a fire station. Who's going to pay that? The taxpayers. The developer ain't going to do a thing for the taxpayers of Dawson County. They're going to come in and make as much money as they can and leave. So y'all go ahead and you keep proving this stuff, because you don't have to listen to me no more. I won't be back. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else here to speak in opposition to the application? Come on up. Give us your name and your address, and then you will have 3 minutes.
I'm not a good public speaker, so. My name is Sabrina Needy. I live on Goodson Road in Dawsonville. I bought the house about 4 years ago. I've lived in Dawsonville since mid-2000. I've watched this county go the way of where I came from. I came from Atlanta originally, born and raised. I moved out as soon as I started having children. I wanted to come to some place that was smaller. Little by little, I went from Chamblee, Doraville. As soon as they got populated, out I went. In 99, I landed in Forsyth County, south, down by Herdsville. Liked it there. Then my son went to Vickery Creek. The population boom in 1 year was so astronomical. It was just insane. Kept moving. The traffic to get just from Herdsville Road to the Publix took over 20 minutes every morning at 5:30 in the morning, 2-lane road. Now y'all are doing this to Dawson Forest, which I live on. You're gonna do it to Lumpkin Campground area. It's a bottleneck that's going so fast, and these big buildings, I've watched them build and flop. We wind up like Alpharetta. They built the mall, all the exterior malls. If you look at all the outside exterior malls, all the, what they call the anchor stores, they're gone. Toys R Us, all the main name stores, the bookstores, everything, because retail as a structure is dying. Everybody's doing online. So we're going to build 100 retail spaces that are going to be parted and sold. And little by little, we're going to wind up with signs we can't even read, just like they are in Duluth, Gwinnett. Gwinnett was a beautiful county about 20 years ago. None of these are nice to live in anymore. I just ask that you look at this county and think, do you want your children, your grandchildren here? Are you going to be able to sustainably get from one place to another and consider yourself living in a nice country home? Or are you just going to be in Alpharetta, Doraville, or just sit in traffic like they do 400? Most people came here to get away. I know I did. I bought a house in rural Dawsonville. Now everything's creeping closer and closer. I've got something on every corner. 9 AC Smith. You got another roundabout going on Hopewell, and we've got the one on Dawson Forest, which will now be a red light because of the how many apartments, 400 on this side, another 2 subdivisions, 400 on this side, in a half-mile stretch. Please consider what you're doing to yourselves, your families, and what our families would want later on. I'd like to have something to hand down. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else here to speak in opposition to the application? Come on up, sir. Give us your name and your address. And you'll have 3 minutes.
Ken Ruffner, 202 Paddock Place. I've been in Dawson County about 25 years. I've lived at this address for 20 years. I'm just asking y'all to please keep these developers in check. I look around me and all I see are these high density projects where these developers are coming in asking for rezoning. And if you drive up and down Dawson Forest Road, there's notice after notice after notice. And you know, all around the general area, you know, they just want to put in condos and townhomes and high density shoebox houses that are just lined up in rows with the exact same setback off the street, just packing them in there, and it's going to destroy the quality of life that we love up here. You know, I have to agree with all the people that have gone before me. I don't want to see this happen to Dawson County. I'm just asking y'all to please keep these developers in check and think and pray hard about what your decision is. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else here to speak in opposition to the application? Anyone else? Okay, I do have one email opposition that I received, our clerk received, and I will read that at this time. This email comes from, and I hope I get this name right, Keith Pagel. That's at 334 Brights Way. Good evening, Dawson County BOC members. I will not be able to attend the meeting on December 17th, so I am writing to again express my strong opposition to the application for rezoning ZA 2008 that Fox Creek Properties is requesting. I would appreciate it if my comments could be shared with those who will be reviewing the request, assuming that they are not all on this email already. I live in the Savannah Trace neighborhood directly behind the proposed development and stand to be impacted much more directly than others. I am opposed to this not only due to the negative impact this will most certainly have on the quality of life on the land closest to my property, but for many other reasons as well. I was present at the first August meeting and expressed my opposition at that time in person, at which time this was tabled until last month. I was not present at the November meeting, but I understand the zoning board recommended approval at this time with no discussion and no community members allowed to express their approval, disapproval. The zoning committee members indicated they needed the necessary time to explore impacts and do tangible studies related to land, police, fire, resources, education, traffic, water usage, etc. after the August meeting, but there was no indication that any of that was done in a satisfactory manner prior to them recommending approval of this request. It does seem kind of unfair to push this forward without giving those that in the Dawson community full information and transparency regarding the findings of these types of detailed studies. There will be tremendous implications for police and fire resources, not to mention the need for additional schools, given the sheer number of homes they want to build. If none of this has been thoroughly vetted, then the decision to approve would not only be irresponsible, it would be reckless to say the least and destroy Dawson County as we know it. I am not willing to take this developer at face value that they will preserve the integrity of the land and nearby Etowah River. The creek that runs directly through, back and then along the side of my property stands to be affected by trash and runoff from homes that will be built nearby, not to mention the noise that will be generated by adding over 1,000 homes. You can't tell me that garbage from the new community won't eventually flow through my land and down to the Etowah River, increasing the already dirty water that was most recently noted in a recent environmental study. Then there is the issue of traffic, which is already at an alarming level, and any more cars on Lumpkin Campground Road, as well as 400, will most certainly cause more traffic snarls at all times of day, similar to Roswell, Alpharetta, and Cumming. I'm fairly confident I can speak for the majority of Dawsonville residents when I say this development is just too large and too complex to be implemented effectively. In their rehearsed speech, the developer had a trained spokesman paint an utopian picture of what they intend to do at the initial meeting, but the reality will, of course, be far different. If this were to be a small, tasteful home community only, then it might actually make sense and be a positive addition to the county. However, while smaller than the previous proposed plans for the site by another developer, the amount of homes, some of higher density, as well as commercial and industrial elements, are still on too grand of a scale. There is no guarantee the developer would not default on some portion of the project if it was going well, if it wasn't going well. If they ran into financial trouble, or if they made a later determination that the commercial industrial portions were viable at some point. Why would we need to add more commercial real estate when we already have space in the general area that can't be filled, or businesses that may or may not survive given the current economic climate? Do we really want to add more commercial space at a time when companies are increasingly moving to a more remote workforce? No local residents that I know want to see Dawson County turn into the next Roswell, Alpharetta, or even worse, Atlanta. This is where we are heading by bowing to developers like this, who come in seeking none other than pure profit at the negative expense of the community. There is absolutely no guarantee that these commercial and industrial pieces will be successful, and if they are not, we will be left with an eyesore and possibly worse. I'm deeply concerned that many unnecessary developments through the county have already been approved and are in the works without regard to the negative effects they will bring and are already bringing. I hear all the time that growth is inevitable. Well, it might be to some extent, but responsible growth is the key, and nothing about this proposal is responsible. I will reiterate once again, this proposal is completely out of touch with what the community needs, and I urge you to please vote no to allow this project to move forward. This is unless your goal is to drive existing residents, many lifelong, from Dawson County to live in other communities that truly care about preserving the quality of life of their residents, as is part of the motto on the county logo and is county and the county planning documents. Keith Pagel, 334 Brights Way. This is the only, I'll ask the clerk, this is the only email we received.
Yes, sir.
Okay. With that, I will close this hearing, having given people in the audience an opportunity to speak. No one else wants to speak in opposition before I close the hearing, correct? Okay. All right, so I'll close that hearing. Board, you have three options. You have the option to allow the withdrawal that has been requested. You have the option to vote for approval of this zoning request, or the option to deny this zoning request. So what's the pleasure of the board?
I make a motion to accept the withdrawal without prejudice.
Okay, motion to accept the withdrawal without prejudice. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, seconded by Commissioner Satterfield. The motion was made by Commissioner Gaines. Any other discussion? Hearing none, please vote. And that's approved 3-0 for the withdrawal of the application. And I'll reiterate, that means that if they decide to come back with a new application, they'll have to go through the entire process, which will give you, once again, the opportunity as citizens to come and speak. All right, we will move on to ZA 2018. The Pacific Group requests to rezone tax map parcel 106-053 and 106-052 from RS Residential Suburban to RS3 Residential Suburban 3 for the purpose of developing a 183 residential lot subdivision. That's on Dawson Forest Road. Follow the same guidelines. Planning Director Jameson Kinley.
Thank you, Chairman. ZA 2018, the Pacific Group is seeking to rezone 65 or 68.5 acres from RS to RS2 for the purpose of developing a 137 lot neighborhood with amenities. The parcel is located adjacent to the Woods development that was approved by this board in 2019. Mr. Seifert and his associates have made many concessions since submitting the original zoning application and site plan. They have met with adjoining property owners, planning and staff, local officials in an attempt to mitigate concerns. The total number of lots have decreased, an amenity area has been added, and the addition of increased buffers of the surrounding development. The Planning Commission recommended denial of this request, citing concerns of its location of the new zoning classification in proximity to 400. The original site plan was 183 lots, and now it's down to 137. So with that being said, there are a number of stipulations that I will let the applicant go over in his presentation.
Quick clarification, when it was presented to the planning board, it was at 81?
I don't honestly remember if we,
183.
yes, it was,
Okay.
initially it was at 183, and then it was tabled by the Planning Commission and then was brought back.
What are we at now?
137.
Okay. And that takes it below the R3.
R3, and it is R2. It better fits the R2 zoning classification.
How many acres did you say?
It is 68.5.
Jameson, what's the required setbacks and what's the minimum green space?
So generally, the setbacks off the road are one thing, but it's important to note that they are requesting to do a conservation neighborhood. So they can cluster the homes a little closer together, and the open space requirement for conservation neighborhood is 30%.
What is this one?
This is over 50%.
Over 50.
Green space?
Yes.
Jamison, from a planning perspective, I think I've heard you in the past. I mean, obviously the more green space, then the less impact on.
So when we originally presented RS2 and RS3 before the board, we had in mind to promote conservation neighborhoods.
Right.
I said we kind of come up with the idea that if you want to create neighborhoods like this one, and you want to push the homes a little closer together, then you have to give up a lot more green space. I would dare to say that this is a good representation of what we had envisioned for a conservation neighborhood with minimal stream crossings, protecting giving those larger buffers around the surrounding developments, the surrounding neighborhoods, and those additional buffers around our rivers and drainage areas that we often try to protect. So from a planning standpoint, this does give a good representation of what a conservation neighborhood should look like.
Jameson, prior to the adoption of the R2, R3 zoning that we're dealing with here tonight, you basically only had two options: 1 per acre or 6, which is the RMF, and nothing in between. So that was one of the reasons for you bringing what you brought in reference to the conservation and stuff like that. So would that be a correct statement?
That is correct.
Okay.
And the general, the reasons why we did that, from my recollection on our land use plan, the ultimate goal is to keep your higher densities on 400 and feather out into larger lots or lower densities as you move away from 400. So
Correct.
the one that we didn't approve, we did redo it in 19, but there was a change. It was approved before that. It was, what was it at? 2 point something? 2.2. So this one is a reduction then. Okay.
This is R2, 2 per acre.
Correct. And that was actually a CPCD commercial comprehensive plan, which would allow for that 6 units an acre. And with a combination of residential multifamily, which is 6 units an acre. So that was a combination of a pre-existing zoning that they came back through and came down on the density
Greatly
actually from the
reduced,
original.
Greatly reduced the density.
Yes.
Okay.
Other questions for Jameson? Thank you, sir. We may have some more a little later. Is the applicant present? Come on up and tell us what you'd like to do.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Kevin Seifert with the Pacific Group. Along with Ray Cunliffe, who is here with us. Ray presented at both the Planning Commission hearings. I'll try not to be too repetitive as I do highlight real quick through the timeline we've gone through. As you all know, we submitted the application for RS3 on these current 2 parcels, 106052 and 106053. As currently zoned, the 61 acres on 106553 could be permitted for 61 homes. Thus, the same size lots that we're proposing could be developed today without a rezoning, and those homes could be built with 0 conditions, meaning any architectural condition. They could just go and build today without having to come before this board. Additionally, all 61 of those lots would have access to Country Crossings to Grizzle Road. This would also add 61 homeowners who could use the existing amenities of Country Crossings. So should you find our rezoning request worthy of approval, we have committed to conditions of zoning that would, number 1, not allow any traffic through Country Crossings. Number 2, guarantee no additional homes would have access to the amenities at Country Crossings, including but not limited to their pool and tennis courts. And it would provide minimum architectural conditions similar to those at the Woods at Dawson that we zoned last year. Notably, I would say we actually have increased minimum square footages on what we're proposing tonight than we even did next door. So in an effort to continue to improve the quality of the product. Our application originally included proposed conditions that cap the total lots, as mentioned, at 183 lots. Required it to be a conservation subdivision, included a 100-foot exterior undisturbed buffer. It also included 13 architectural conditions, ensuring quality and maintaining consistency with those similar conditions imposed at the Woods of Dawson next door. And we committed to work with the Georgia Native Plant Society. After feedback from residents and county stakeholders, we agreed to the following 5 adjustments to our proposal. We committed to a reduction down to 153 lots, which brought the proposed density down to 2.18 units per acre. This would have, basically matched, but put us just below the Woods at Dawson next door, which had been approved at 2.2. We then committed to an amenity area with a pool, cabana, and playground and trails. We committed to increasing our undisturbed buffer up to 150 feet undisturbed buffer to the properties to the northwest and south of the community, with the only deviation shown on the 150 foot, or to the 150 foot shown on Exhibit C, which really was adjacent to the existing Woods at Dawson, and then at our entrance road where we were pinched to come off of Dawson Forest Road. We then committed to providing a fence along the shared property line with Country Crossings per the request of the members of Country Crossings, And we committed to a contribution of $500 per lot towards offsetting the service costs associated with single-family dwellings. All 5 of these were reflected in the updated list of proposed conditions that we presented at our second planning commission hearing. Our first one was tabled after being heard. At the second planning commission hearing, we also confirmed the traffic impact report concluded that the future analysis showed continued acceptable operations on all approaches at all 3 roundabout studied intersections, which includes the existing at Lumpkin Campground and the 2 future at 9. No off-site mitigation was necessitated by this proposed subdivision. Additionally, the DRI report stated there were no regional concerns regarding utilities and traffic or transportation infrastructure, assuming compliance with all applicable federal, state, and local regulations, including best environmental practices regarding stormwater management. The DRI did recommend the inclusion of sidewalks and trails. We will have sidewalks throughout the community as required by the ordinance, and we will also have trails at the amenity area as mentioned. Lastly, at the second planning commission hearing, we summarized how we had worked to satisfy the concerns of some of the property owners adjacent to us along the entrance road at Dawson Forest Road. We to our east, we have been able to create the full 150-foot buffer entirely. And to the west, we actually contracted another 1-acre parcel so that we could provide a 65-foot undisturbed buffer to the west of the proposed right-of-way for our entrance road. So coming out of that second planning commission hearing, and between that moment and as we stand here tonight, we've thought through these comments and feedback, and we're now proposing the following final new adjustments. Once again, reducing the lots from 153 down to the 137 that was mentioned. We are now below 2 units per acre at 1.96 units per acre. This is allowing us to request a lower zoning district. So go down from RS3 to RS2. So I think in both cases, we're immediately feathering down from next door at Dawson, the woods at Dawson, from 2.2 to 1.96, and possibly, arguably, even more importantly, feathering down that zoning district to RS2. We've also are willing and have committed to increasing our contribution per lot from $500 to $1,000 per lot towards offsetting the service costs associated with single-family dwellings.
And that's above impact fees.
Correct.
You still got to pay impact.
And those will be paid prior to recording of final plat separate of impact fees. Correct. We have been able to adjust the plan to accommodate now a minimum of 90 feet of undisturbed buffer for our immediate neighbor to our west as we come off of Dawson Forest Road. And for 40% of that adjacency with him, we've actually gotten to the full 150 foot. So I think we're averaging 117 feet of undisturbed buffer to the west. And we've worked really hard at that. We honestly started at 0. We acquired more property. We continue to work through, we're going through some more expensive development costs in order to achieve even more. And we've gotten to this minimum 90 foot undisturbed. So again, the latest updated site plan with the 137 lots in a proposed RS2 conservation layout and the updated proposed zoning conditions have all been provided. We came to the first public planning commission hearing with substantial support from Country Crossings. We left the first planning commission hearing, came back with 5 listed items above as responses to the concerns we heard. We then presented the findings from both the third-party traffic impact report and from the DRI, and we left the second planning commission hearing and are now coming back with the 4 further considerations I just listed. So in summary, we urge you to approve this request to rezone approximately 70 acres because number one, our willingness to work with all of our neighbors as shown through our continuous adjustments. Number 2, the merits of this proposal within the suburban residential land use category. Number 3, the support from the many residents of Country Crossings. And number 4, because of our latest adjustments to address the concerns of this county. We've increased our contribution to the county, worked hard to stretch the undisturbed buffer to the west along our entrance road. And most importantly, we've reduced that density down to 1.96 units per acre at 137 lots, allowing us to come down that zoning district to RS2. With all of these reasons, along with the fact that we've provided substantial architectural conditions to ensure a quality product while helping feather down that density as we come from 400. With that, we'll just reserve the rest of our time, if that's all right, for any questions or any comments.
Questions for the applicant?
So the entranceway from the entrance to go by that first house, I guess, on their east side,
Correct,
you
yeah.
increased to 90 feet.
So correct. At this point, we're buying a parcel and tearing down a home. So inherently, we're paying a pretty large per acre price to just help shift this road over to accommodate the neighbor next door. And at this point, we're wedged between two existing homeowners and trying to provide everybody as much possible undisturbed buffer as we can. And I think we've even erred slightly to give more undisturbed buffer to our west.
Are you ever doing plantings or anything like?
For the section that is not the full 150 feet. And as that neighbor looks towards this new road, much of the new road is actually so low, they can't see it. But as soon as you can possibly see it, from that point to the 150-foot full width, we have a double row of evergreen screening that will be planted to further add to their screening for that section as they get to the 150.
And you're approximately 400 something feet off the road or more.
We are over 750 feet to the edge of the first property line.
So you wouldn't even see the house on the road.
No, I don't think so.
Basically, you wouldn't see any houses from the road from Dawson.
No, I think you're going to see an entrance and possibly say you would have to drive in to see what's back there.
That's with a 150-foot buffer all the way around, except right at the entrance where it's 90 plus.
With the one exception when we're next to the woods at Dawson, but that was an adjacent development we did. Right.
Other questions?
More of a high level comment and tonight and some of the other conversations that we've had is the feedback from the community is listened to. I think they realize that you can't fully shut development off completely, but to work with developers to continue to do some of the things. I guess it's just a unique situation because developers come to us and I don't like development. I don't like you guys coming in and changing the way of life that we have in Dawson County. But at the same sense, I understand that there's give and take on those things, and just the high level, haven't been engaged in it, but the high level of the give and take going through the process of listening to what those people said in the first public hearing, or I guess even before that, because you said you met with one of the neighbors and tried to mitigate some of their concerns, I think is a right approach. And I would encourage other developers, may be in the room tonight we got other ones coming, but to try to work through the process. And it's our goal to, honestly, it's our goal to push back and make this thing as minimally invasive as possible. The idea of a conservation subdivision, as Jameson pointed out, is more green space. And that's what we love about Dawson County is a lot of green space. And I can just appreciate the process that's taken place, because it sounds like what I'm hearing is every time you got feedback through the planning and through other avenues, you've been able to reduce the impact that you have on the community. And, in addition to paying the impact fees, which we have set, the willingness to pay the extra $1,000, I think you said per lot, to go towards increase in, I think, Mr. Stansel or Dunce, I can't remember your last name, but brings that up is, there's an impact on, once you're said and gone, we still have an impact to serve some of these guys. So to try to make up that gap, I think is, I think it's a good wheel, I guess I should say. So still don't like development.
Other questions of the applicant? Thanks, sir. We may have some more later. All right. So at this time, I will open the hearing. We'll follow the same guidelines. Is there anyone here to speak? This time I'll start with the opposition. Anyone here to speak in opposition to the application? Come on up, sir. Give us your name and your address.
My name is Jerry Fagan. I live at 88 Old Friendship Lane in Dawsonville, and I built my home about 38 years ago when I first moved to Dawson County. And I've been in the real estate business. I've worked with developers before. Tom Cousins was one that I sold homes for many years ago, back in Indian Hills in Cobb County. And they did it right. I'm not against developers. I just want some control over what is done. How many is enough? How many homes do we have to have before too much is too much? People around here have already expressed my views before, with the other developer. And I agree with them totally. It just has to be controlled. Your water runoff from the streets, from the driveways, all flows into the creeks. Eventually, it gets into our water supply. And no matter how many trees or how many green spaces you have, it's still going to run. That's going to affect our quality of life. Water is quality of life. It has to be considered. So just consider how many is enough. That's all I'm asking. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Well, I better write my name down here
Yep.
before I leave.
Name and address.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Commissioner.
sir. Anyone else here to speak in opposition to the application? Come on up. Give us your name and your address. Yes, please.
And you did a good job public speaking last time. You were nervous.
Thank you, still am. I didn't cover two things. The school, for one. I appreciate that we have a builder that's willing to work with us. That's awesome. And I'd like to see more of that if we're going to have any here. But to me, the development, I was just writing down, we have Riley Place, Dawson Junction, the Woods, the big complex that is building a roundabout on Hopewell, and two complexes next to Walmart. All of those feed into Blacksmill Elementary. I am a preschool teacher. I am a licensed in-home daycare here, and I understand what it means to have too many and not be able to give quality care. It's a very important thing, and importantly too is emergency, fire, police. We need these in order to be careful for the people that we do bring in, that we are safe and able to care for all of them. I worry that with the 4 different roundabouts and building and everything, should I have an emergency, an asthma attack, is someone going to be able to get to me in time with that many different obstacles and complexes and cars? It's single lane, doesn't offer shoulders. They can't go off the ravine to come get to me. So again, I'll ask for, please just control and care and growth. We can only put so much, and especially the strain on our teachers. That's a lot to put in just one school. Consider diversity. Otherwise, you're going to have to rezone the schools again to rezone districts, and they're all going to be living in one district and have to travel 15 extra minutes to go to school, which puts more on our system, buses, all of those things. Just other things to consider when adding more homes to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else here to speak in opposition to the application? Come on up, give us your name and your address. You'll have 3 minutes.
Bruce Dunzel, Lula Garrett Road. Gentlemen, appreciate Pacific Group's willingness to work with developers. That's really unprecedented. But nevertheless, I'd ask that you disapprove this zoning application for many of the same reasons we provided before. Population growth is not inevitable. Projects like this are nothing more than a build it and they will come invitation to mass migration. These kind of policies have desecrated our national borders and now likewise threaten to erase our boundary against metro Atlanta sprawl. Forgive my paper brain. Also want to say that many of the Planning Commission and board meetings have removed zoning stipulations. So we therefore have no confidence in this process that developers will ever be held fully accountable to implement the approved plans. And some of that's for contingency, some of that's for obvious reasons, but nevertheless, it's become sort of a revolving door. Further ask that you approve tonight a moratorium on all future residential subdivision and apartment development until 3 conditions are met. First, that you complete a comprehensive assessment of all such developments that are now under construction or approved as to their full cumulative impacts. This would include on schools and emergency services, traffic, and infrastructure, but not limited to those categories. Second, that you provide a full report to the taxpayers of those impacts with your proposed remedial actions to address them. And third, that you secure in hand all of the tax monies required to meet these obligations. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else here to speak in opposition to the application? Come on up, give us your name and your address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Ken Ruffner, 202 Paddock Place. This development, proposed development, is going in directly behind my home. Beautiful piece of property. It's filled with wildlife. Hate to see it destroyed. But as I said before, I see all these new developments going in around me that are just high density homes. And I find it hard to believe that any traffic study's going to say that this is not going to have an impact on us. We already have times where it's hard to get out of our neighborhood out on the Dawson Forest Road. And with all this project and the one that's currently being built just east of it and the other proposed projects up and down Dawson Forest Road, I don't see how Dawson Forest Road's not going to wind up being 4 or 5 lanes. But the proposed housing that I saw was minimum 1,200 square feet, maximum 1,600 square feet. I've driven through Mancy Park and the other one over there off of Red Rider Road and seen all these little houses just packed in there. I've got an acre, 1.43 acres of 2,000 square foot ranch on a full basement with 1,500 more square feet in a finished basement. And you know, it just hurts me to think that there's going to be all these little 1,200 foot shoeboxes packed in behind me on what used to be a beautiful piece of property. And that's all I see going in around me are these houses. These little houses just packed in here, row after row. And it'd be a different story if they were doing 1-to-1 back there and building $300,000 or $400,000 homes, but that's not what's being built. It's all these little high density projects, townhomes, apartments, and we're just getting overrun. It's just, like I said before, it's destroying our quality of life. And I hope it doesn't happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here to speak in opposition to the application? Give us your name and address, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Taylor Atkins. I live at 214 Paddock Place. My wife and I bought this house roughly 5 years ago. I grew up in Alpharetta. We moved when I was in 4th grade to the North Forsyth area. And then after high school, we moved to Dawson County because of the growth. Again, I'm 32. I don't want this county to turn out like Forsyth County did. It's absolutely ridiculous. All the stoplights, the amount of traffic, not to mention these high density homes aren't going to bring anything to the community. Studies show what happens when high density homes are put in, the type of people that end up coming in over time, taking over these homes. It's not conducive to the people that live here, that have lived here for years and years. Not to mention the strain it's going to put on our public services. I mean, the schools, police, fire, everything. I strongly urge you at the very minimum to keep it at RS1. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else here to speak in opposition to the application? Come on up, give us your name, your address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Bob Michelson. I live on Dawson Forest Road, just to the left or the west side of this development, and I am at his pinch point at the driveway coming off of Dawson Forest Road. I thank you for your efforts to move that buffer from 0 feet to 65 and now to 90. And I'm just looking to be treated the same way the other 45 or 50 adjacent homeowners are treated, 150-foot buffer. I'm an expert in road noise. I live 200 feet off Dawson Forest Road, so I know what traffic sounds like. I think the new total, he said, was 137 homes. Let's just say there's 1 car per household, 137 cars coming down that driveway in the morning, 137 going back in the afternoon, delivery trucks, UPS trucks, school buses going up and down that road. It'll be a very noisy road, and I'm trying to push it as far away from my house as I can. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else here to speak in opposition to the application? Give us your name and your address, and then you will have 3 minutes.
My name is Doug Hughes. I live at 184 Paddock Place in Dawsonville here. The thing that I wanted to talk about is in the woods back there. He's talking about conservation, and what bothers me the most is where my yard is I probably got a steeper backyard than most of my neighbors. And when it rains, it just runs down that hill, and there's a creek back there, and I have a hard time seeing it on the maps that they're showing. But besides the creek that they have back there, it normally runs between about 1 to 2 feet deep, all the time. But when that rain comes through, you can see where it gets up to almost 4 feet. I mean, the rain really comes down. It's etching out the sides of the bank. And then on the other side of it, there's another runoff that runs into it goes from the west to the east, and it runs down into and connects into the creek back there. I just don't see how they can come in and put lots in and try to control this water. We have a neighbor that he's had to put in an industrial drainage in his pasture just to keep all the water coming, and he's still having flood problems. And he backs up to basically, I don't want to call it a swamp, but it's more of a marsh where there's beavers back there and wildlife. And I just don't see what good this has to do. I mean, we've got so many developments right now. I look at that apartment complex up there on Dawson Forest and 53. That's going to be a nightmare trying to get up and through that area. Right now, you can't, if you're coming up Dawson Forest to 53, you got to time what you're going to go, because if you want to go over that Tractor Supply, you're waiting. We have all these traffic problems here, and I keep on hearing traffic studies. I'm a retired guy. I got nothing to do during the day, okay? 7 days a week, I'm on Dawson Forest Road. not once have I seen any type of person counting. I haven't seen the road strip, you know, the counter road strip. Is it aerial? And if it was, I mean, what time was it taken? I mean, because I don't understand where people are coming across saying, you know, oh, this isn't going to affect the traffic. It's affecting our traffic. And the tree aspect, you know, they have that 55 plus community going in down by the gravel pit down there. They've stripped that place of trees. I mean, is that what's going to happen here too? And what's the aspect of them trying to replace the trees? How many they can take down? Because I mean, that forest, there is definitely a forest back there. But I definitely think that we can't, you know, you can't really stop people from building, but I think the RS1 should be the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here speak in opposition to the application? Anyone else? Anyone here to speak in favor of the application? Anyone here to speak in favor of the application? Seeing none, I'll close that hearing. What's the pleasure of the board?
I had a couple quick questions, if it's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is Jameson. What's the minimum setbacks? If there is no rezoning, what's current setbacks there now? So if somebody came in and just built based on what it's at now.
Based on current zoning, which is RSR.
Yeah.
The setbacks would be 100 feet from Parkway, other streets, 40 feet from the front, 10 feet from the sides, and 20 feet from the rear.
40 feet front, 10 feet sides. What was the back?
20.
20 feet from the back.
20 feet from the rear.
And we're at 150. Okay, retention process of runoff water. Explain to me on subdivision regulations, what the process is for runoff water and how is it handled?
Within our subdivision regulations, we refer to a lot of the state and federal guidelines for retention and water runoff. So they would have to provide a detailed plan that would have to be approved by the NRCS and our and as far as our local guidelines as well for water retention for anything that comes off the site.
I mean, we do have on-site water retention areas, ponds,
Yes.
to mitigate
Yes,
water.
we would
just
require that, absolutely.
Blatantly running off. Okay. When we talk about green space, there was a comment about mass grading. When we are dealing with green space, they're not able to get into those green space areas. In, you know, if we got a 150-foot buffer, they're not able to get into that from a grading standpoint and tear those trees down.
No, they're not.
Undisturbed.
That would be undisturbed, and it sits nature as it is.
Yes.
Okay. And there was a comment about the houses being 1,200, 1,600. It seems like I heard a different number on square footages. That might be.
Yes.
Step up here. Yeah, absolutely.
So the latest list of conditions that were sent out, we've agreed to a minimum of 1,800 square feet. More importantly, 75% of the homes have to be at least 2,200. So to your point, the 1,200 is no longer even, 75% will be 2,200. And then below, only 25% could be as low as 1,800.
Low or 1,800?
Could be as low. It's only 25%.
No
could
lower
be.
than 1,800.
No. 1,800 is the minimum no matter
Minimum
what.
1,800.
Yeah.
But then 75% of the development has to be at least 2,200.
Other questions?
The piece next to this, Jameson, was CPCD, which was 6 units an acre.
Correct. With a commercial component. And just to go back, part of his slides in the zoning conditions, the 1,800 square feet he was referring to was zoning condition number 13, with the 75% of the homes being a minimum heated floor area of 2,200 square feet.
Can you, to refresh my mind, we've been through a lot of information. Can you
Yeah.
read those stipulations, please?
Even you got the latest ones?
Yeah.
Absolutely, and we can put those on the screen as well. Starting with number 1, total lot count shall not exceed 137 lots. Number 2, this shall be a conservation design and shall abide by Article X of the land use ordinance. Number 3, there should be a minimum of 150-foot undisturbed buffer to all properties to the north, west, and south of the community as shown in Exhibit C, the zoning site plan. The allowed deviations from this 150 feet are represented on Exhibit C. Number 4, carriage-style garage doors with decorative hardware or the embellishments shall be used on all homes each home shall not have less than 2-car garage. Number 5, the roofing materials on all homes shall be cedar shake, 3-tab architectural dimensional style asphalt shingles or metal as appropriate to architectural styles of each home as determined by the builder. Number 6, all overhangs shall include gables and side gables will have a minimum of 12-inch overhang on all sides. Number 7, the developer shall use a variety of techniques to avoid the monotonous appearance of identical homes. Such techniques may employ, among others, the use of different front elevations, architectural styles, building exteriors, or other similar techniques so that no house is the same or as any house directly in front or on either adjacent side of it. Number 8, all roofs and gables shall be the pitch no less than 8/12. This condition shall not apply to dormers, porches, bay windows, and third-floor retreats. Number 9, all homes shall have a minimum of 2 12-inch house and foundation offsets in the front. Number 10, poured concrete retaining walls shall be visible. Poured concrete retaining walls visible from the right-of-way must be painted or faced with stone or brick. No wooden retaining walls over 3 feet in height shall be permitted. And the next slide. Thank you. 11, the exterior materials of all homes shall consist of brick, stone, cement-based lap siding, cement-based siding panels, cedar, and or shake. Number 12, the front facade of all homes shall have a minimum of 45% brick, stone, or shake with accents such as, but not limited to, hardy plank lap siding. Number 13, homes shall have a minimum heated floor area of 1,800 square feet. At least 75% of the homes shall have a minimum heated floor area of 2,200 square feet. Number 14, all roof vents, pipes, and other roof equipment except chimneys shall be located at the rear elevations and shall be painted to match the color of the roof. Number 15, no above ground swimming pools shall be permitted. Number 16, no air conditioning units may be installed. No window air conditioning units may be installed. That would be a big difference, wouldn't it? Number 17, developers shall allow Georgia Native Plant Society to rescue any native plants prior to grading the property. Number 18, the developer shall provide an amenity area with a pool, cabana, and playground. Number 19, developer shall construct a 4-foot tall, 4-strand barbed wire fence running the entire length of the northern property line with Country Crossings Recreation Association, Inc. This fence shall be located on the property line where the shared property line falls south of the creek and shall be located approximately 50 feet from south of the creek where property line falls north of the creek. Number 20, prior to final plat approval, $1,000 per lot shall be given by the developer of the county for the Lumpkin Campground road improvements. And number 21, entrance on Dawson Forest must include a waterfall feature.
Question for the developer.
Go ahead.
Go back to the entrance where you said you've increased it, bought more property. I know that wasn't one of the stipulations.
Does that show
How
up in that
close?
C?
How close can you get that to the 150 foot? You've done the rest of them all the way around the other property since you bought more property. I mean, can you get the one was 90, it was 90,
Yeah.
and you said you purchased some more property?
Was
Well, it used to be
65.
0.
That was to get it to
Yeah,
90?
yes, we've gone from 0, bought the property to get to 65, and then came in basically use of walls and, found ways to spend some money to get it as far as we could, which was the 90.
So 90 is the maximum.
It's yeah, we have no more room. Yeah. But we are providing the screening so that in those portions that's not 150, you either can't see the road or you see a double row of evergreens.
So that needs to be in one of the stipulations, or is it in the
It's
exhibit?
represented in the updated
Exhibit
exhibit
C.
C, so it reflects that.
Okay.
Question I have for you as well, in reference to number 19, I believe it is. Are you willing to put something besides the barbed wire fence? I know in discussion that I had with you, had said that, I guess the neighbors to the other one, that's what they had told you, but I'm not much on barbed wire fence that somebody could run into. So would you be willing to change that to a plank fence or something along that line other than barbed wire?
Absolutely. We were trying to work with the request, but absolutely.
I mean,
Yes.
barbed wire, like the chairman's point, that's not gonna stop anybody from probably stepping through or stepping over it, but. it
Because it's a
will.
hazard.
If somebody's running through there and a kid running through there, they're not
And I
gonna see
don't-
that barbed wire.
Right. And I don't want to, by the nature of this type of design of community, I think a 4-board farm rail fence with hog wire so that you have a deterrence, which is the point of the fence, but it actually lends towards the conservation rather than a pure privacy. Yeah. Or safety issues, barbed wire.
Okay. Other questions or information needed?
Jameson, when we consider the going from the R3 to the R2, from a planning perspective, does this concept meet within, the prior one we talked about, that zoning is a good zoning, but it didn't check all the boxes, I guess. Does this one check the boxes for that R2 and the goal of
Yes, R2,
mitigating any impact?
R2 and R3 are much similar in pretty much all aspects, except for the fact that it's 3 units an acre as opposed to 2 units an acre. So this does check all the boxes to be approved as an RS2 as opposed to an RS3, which was the original application.
Other questions?
I think that answered your question.
You did. Other information needed? Motion.
I'll make a motion to approve ZA 20-18 with the stipulations read by Jameson, other than the adding the fence, to change that type of fence from a barbed wire fence to a panel type fence with hog wire,
Full board.
yeah, full board fence, I guess you would call it.
Okay, motion for approval from Commissioner Satterfield. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Gaines. Discussion. Hearing none, please vote. And that's approved 3-0. Move on to ZA 2022. Jim King, on behalf of Piedmont Residential, request to rezone tax map parcel 114-033-005 from RA Residential Agriculture to RMF Residential Multifamily for the purpose of developing a 145 semi-detached residential lot subdivision, and this is on Dawson Forest Road East. Jameson.
Jim King, on behalf of Piedmont Residential, is seeking to rezone 30.48 acres at the corner of Highway 53 East and Dawson Forest Road from RA to residential multifamily for the purpose of constructing a 145 semi-detached home neighborhood. The development would be situated on the interior portion of the property with the outlying road frontage being reserved for future commercial development. Residential multifamily is an appropriate zoning classification in line with our comprehensive plan. The site plan will have to include a second entrance to meet subdivision regulations, but the concept of having the residential density behind the commercial frontage is in line with what is pointed out in our 400 corridor. Although we would like to see a more inclusive development to include the commercial as well, this rezoning is just for the interior portion of the property. And while the rest is left vacant. It's important to note that the planning department is still in the process of updating our 400 corridor guidelines, and this development will be held to all those guidelines that will be in place at the time of the development unless otherwise stipulated here. The planning commission requests or recommended denial of this request based on it not having that, not being able to stipulate, not being able to see that commercial component around it. And Mr. King has requested to withdraw this application without prejudice to move back and take a more comprehensive look at this development. So we're in the same situation as we were with the first zoning application with the request for withdrawal without prejudice. I'll answer any questions.
Questions for Jameson?
So this one was just the residential component, and there was nothing mentioned about the commercial piece. And they're willing to go back and redo the whole thing.
Correct. Mr. Gaines.
What's the acreage?
30.48.
That's just the residential piece?
That is just the residential piece that
What's
they
the
are.
overall acreage?
That is an excellent question that I might have to get right back with you.
Okay.
Give me a second to look that up and I'll answer that momentarily.
Okay. Any other questions for Jameson at this time? That's the
38.48.
residential piece. All right, thank you, sir. Is the applicant present? Come on up, tell us what you'd like to do. Name and address, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Jim King, 416 Overlook Circle, Dawsonville, Georgia. Just as Jameson told you, the plan we came before, or the initial application that came before the Planning Commission, my client, Piedmont Homes, was only buying the central portion of this property. They was allowing about 300 foot of depth around Dawson Forest Road and 53 for future commercial that he would develop himself. He did not want to, there's nothing he could really do with the interior of the portion. So it was going to be a mixed use development, but we didn't have any information or any control on the commercial piece. What the Planning Commission brought up and Jameson brought up about being able to see the entire piece put together. After the Planning Commission meeting, we went back to the owner of the property and persuaded him that we'd have a much better case, a much better development if we incorporated the entire property together. And that's what we plan to do. And we're going to go back and do a comprehensive plan of the entire piece of property, including the commercial and the residential, and bring it back. And that's why we respectfully request that you allow us to withdraw this application without prejudice.
Total acreage appears to be 57.878.
57.87.
Questions of the applicant? Okay, thank you. May have some later. Okay. This time I'll open the hearing. Anyone here to speak in favor of the application? Anyone here speak in favor of the application? Anyone here to speak in opposition to the application? Come on up, sir. Give us your name and address once again. Please sign in.
My name's Jerry Fagan again, and I'm here to speak against the application. I live on Lake Lanier. We've already got the apartments that have been approved on Dawson Forest. How many people are in those apartments that are going to wind up going to Lake Lanier? Again, I ask you to consider how many is too much. We don't need those. We just don't need that many people. That's the water supply for the city of Atlanta. How many people are going to go to Lake Lanier and use Lake Lanier? Traffic is going to be a nightmare. It's already a nightmare on Lake Lanier. Boats are going everywhere. And it's dangerous. I've lived on Lake Lanier for 38 years, and it's dangerous. And if you've got that many more going on Lake Lanier, you're asking for trouble, a lot of trouble. That's what I have to add to this.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else to speak in opposition to the application? Come on up, give us your name and your address. You'll have 3 minutes.
Gentlemen, you're well aware that housing and apartments, the residents consume far more government services than they provide taxes to cover. You also know that our current medical and emergency and law enforcement equipment and staff is already inadequate, especially for the area that we're talking about. These types of development projects make more SPLOST to buy equipment and property tax increases to pay salaries inevitable. And we're already seeing that. SPLOST 7 is already spent. It's not even approved yet. This approach always places the safety of current citizens not first, but after the fact, all for the purposes of bringing in more people. Again, I'm asking that you approve a moratorium on all future residential subdivision and apartment development until those conditions I mentioned earlier are met. This will now include a comprehensive assessment of all development under construction or approved, which would include this evening's approval of ZA 2018. Earlier this evening, you rightly took to task the Sheriff's Department for not planning ahead as far as their future needs and their technology goes. You're doing exactly the same thing with our infrastructure. I want to point out the schools in particular. Every one of these subdivisions that are proposed come in and are individually assessed. There's no cumulative assessment. What's going to happen is in a year or 2 years, you're going to come to us and you're going to say, we need a special tax to build more schools for the children of the people that you're moving in with these approvals. So I'd ask you that you stop doing this and put a moratorium on this development until you get a handle on how much the assessment and how much of the impact we're going to absorb and what you're proposing for the next 5 to 10 years as far as the tax increases to cover what you've already approved. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else here to speak in opposition to the application? Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll close that hearing. What's the pleasure of the board? You have the same options as you had at the first zoning. You have had a request for withdrawal of this application without prejudice. You could take up, or you could vote to approve or deny the application. What's the pleasure of the board?
Make a motion that we approve the request to withdraw without prejudice.
Motion to approve the request to withdraw without prejudice. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Gaines, seconded by Commissioner Satterfield. Discussion. Hearing none, please vote. And that motion is approved 3-0. We'll move on to the new business. First up, we have consideration of request for approval of FY 2021 State Public Defender contract. This is an annual update that's budgeted every year. This comes before the board for approval for our State Public Defender contract. Any other information needed in reference to that? Motions.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Satterfield,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Gaines. Discussion. Hearing none, please vote. And that's approved 3-0. Next up, we have consideration of request for approval of FY 2021 Public Defender Intergovernmental Agreement between Dawson and Hall Counties. This is an agreement that we have between the two entities that's in this circuit, Dawson and Hall County. It is an annual agreement as well, and is budgeted for. Any other information needed? Motions.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Gaines,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Satterfield. Discussion. Hearing none, please vote. And that's approved 3-0. Next up, we have consideration of the 2020 Local Maintenance Improvement Grant Application Approval Request. Mr. McKee presented that to you 2 weeks ago. This is the annual money we get from the state for road improvements that we match, and we match that usually through our in-kind. Any other information needed? Motions.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Satterfield.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Gaines. Discussion. Hearing none, please vote. And that's approved 3-0. Next, we have consideration of request for funding and contract with Eagle View Emergy. This was we're getting another view of all the property, and it's going to be used by multiple agencies, the planning department, as well as the tax assessor's office, the fire department, and GIS. It was broken down into a payment plan
30.
over several years. And we would be approving this and the first year payment, which I think $18,000 something a year.
And is that coming out of fund balance, or is it coming out of each department's that's using it, or
No, we would be adding that money to GIS.
to GIS?
that
That's right,
department, yeah.
that's right.
18,000 for the first year.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve, moving forward with the,
Eagle View Imaging.
contract with Eagle View Imagery.
Second that.
Motion by Commissioner Gaines, seconded by Commissioner Satterfield. Discussion. Hearing none, please vote. And that's approved 3-0. Next, we move on to consideration of board appointments. First up, we have the Board of Tax Assessors. Sam Guthrie, reappointed term January 2021 through December 2025. Sam has been on the board, served us well, and is willing to continue. And as you realize, this is a board that requires much training, and he has that training. So that's the recommendation to the board. What's your pleasure?
Make a motion to approve the reappointment.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Satterfield,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Gaines. Discussion.
Thank you, sir, for doing it.
Hearing none, please vote. And Sam, you're approved, 3-0. Next up, we have Planning Commission reappointments, and if it's your desire, we'll take all these together. On the Planning Commission, Jason Hamby, District 1, reappointment, term January 2021 through December 2021. John Maloney, District 2, reappointment, term January 2021 through December 2022. Tim Bennett, District 3, reappointment, term January 21 through December 2021. Neil Hornsey, District 4, reappointment, January 2021 through December 2022. And this is getting back in line with the bylaws that we've had. Motion.
Make a motion to approve the reappointments of District 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Gaines.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Satterfield. Discussion. Hearing none, please vote. And all 4 of those are approved. Move on to C, which is Park and Rec. That would be Tony Keller, his reappointment. Let me find my years. Okay. And then Spencer would be January 21 through December 2024 for both of those gentlemen. Pleasure of the board.
Make a motion to approve both reappointments.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Satterfield.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Gaines. Discussion. Hearing none, please vote. And those appointments are approved 3-0. Moving on to D under number 5. The Dennis Fedoric replacing Mike Ball on the Development Authority, term January 2021 through December 2024. Any other information needed? Motions.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Gaines,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Satterfield. Discussion. Hearing none, please vote. And that is approved 3-0.
I guess he'll still be able to be on a volunteer fire department basis even with that appointment too, won't he?
That's correct. All right. Move to number 6. Consideration of annexation C 210043. Jameson, you going to speak to that first? Or is the attorney going to speak to that first?
I can give us can get us started at least.
Okay.
So this is an amended annexation application to C 210043. Basically, we objected before because it created an island. This one allows this new site plan gives a 180-foot strip of land down the center of the property to allow that alleviate that the island issue.
I think it's 130.
There we go, 130. My apologies.
Excuse me, what's the length, total length of that? 130 times what?
It's roughly 1,589 feet with a curvature, so a little more than that. So over 1,500 feet.
They put a couple football fields there.
So the staff redid their analysis. We still had a land use issue of changing from RSR, which is 1 unit per acre, to RS3, 3 units units an acre, which could potentially cause an increased burden to the county for additional infrastructure. And that is in your staff report. But they did alleviate the island, the issue of the island.
Questions for Jameson? Mr. Fricke, you have something to add?
Responsibility of the, on the plan, that roundabout, what's the rough estimate cost on a roundabout like that?
I might leave that up to our public works director.
David?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, again, thank you for the opportunity to speak.
If I may digress a little bit, and I have met with the developer or the proposed developer on this particular site. If I may comment on
Please.
the roundabout. Went back and looked at my records on actually Halloween. I met with the developer back at the end of October. I was presented with a concept plan of development. At the time, I was asked to comment on the intersection of Allen Street and Perimeter Road. And we had a fairly lengthy conversation with Brian, my project manager in my office. And based on that, at that time, my recommendation was to look at the consideration of a roundabout at that location. We know that the intersection does perform negatively at peak times, obviously, especially during the school peak times. It does perform negatively at a level of service F, which is failing, obviously. So we did ask them, at that time, I did ask them to, in their concept plan, show a roundabout. It was through my meeting, I would determine at that time that it was an annexation request. Again, like I said, I didn't have all the facts based on the development. And I know there's been some discussion about how we got to that roundabout and the cost. I would estimate the cost of that roundabout, to get back to your question, roughly between $1 million and $1.5 million. Again, and that's 100% on a concept level, without looking at what utilities have to be moved. And there's more to this than a standard roundabout. We have to have a staging lane for the school traffic to accommodate that, so that it doesn't negatively affect that intersection.
I guess some of this roundabout is in the county.
Well, it currently, the entire intersection
Is in the
and the
county.
entire road is the responsibility of Dawson County, yes.
So this is another example of the city annex and property, building houses, not having any impact fees, putting more burden back on the county. I know their citizens pay taxes, but why should we be responsible to build a roundabout or improve their roads on the burden they're putting on us? I mean, I'm not asking you that question. I'm just speaking, like I said, they want to annex and build the houses, but then don't have any impact fees to pay the services. And it falls back on the county. That's just a comment.
Yeah, and most of the annexations that we've seen this board, years ago, there were some funky little pig trails to get out to Gold Creek and stuff like that, but that hasn't been the case as of recent. So most of them are much cleaner than this one. This one seems a little interesting in order to try to make it work.
Big popsicle stick.
It's definitely different. Definitely different.
Mr. Chairman, members, I wanted to just provide just a little insight into where we stand and what the county needs to address going forward based on the current statutes. With the presentation of notice of the submission of the annexation, the county or the state annexation statutes require the city to provide notice of that annexation. We have received that. And this is now comes before you because within 30 days, if the county wishes to interpose an objection based on land use objection criteria, that objection must be lodged and received by the city within 30 days. That means that it would have to be in the early January, I believe. I think we received this within the last week, maybe. I don't recall. So early to mid-January. Anyway, before the board's next meeting. The reason this comes to you is to decide whether or not the board wishes to interpose such a land use objection. There are also criteria which do not require a particular notice, but according to the annexation statutes, might render the proposed annexation void if it didn't meet those requirements. There are two different ways of analyzing an annexation and responding. Under the first option, under the land use option, if you object, it goes to Department of Community Affairs, who impanels an arbitration panel, and the city and county will present evidence in a hearing showing whether or not the proposed annexation imposes a material burden on the county based on the increase in the density or land use, or the increased burden on infrastructure based on the change in the zoning between what it currently sits in the county and what the proposed city is. I understand the designations are RSR and RA, I think, are combined in the county right now, which at a maximum, I think, allows 1 unit per acre. The proposed classification within the city is to allow 3 units per acre. So effectively, at least 3 times the possible residential density. So I would say that there's definitely a change in the land use designation density. I understand that it appears that that change may result in the need for the additional road and the roundabout. If those are based on the increase in the density, then that presents the ability to object on a land use objection, which would could put the county and the city into that arbitration process. The second route, I understand that looking at this option, that within the past several months, there has been a subdivision of a larger parcel than this 70 acres. And that was effectively what postponed or created an amended annexation request, because the original request had not at the time had a subdivision, and the annexation request therefore was for a small piece of a large parcel. The annexation statutes don't let you annex a partial parcel. So you have to annex the entire parcel, and it didn't meet the requirements at that time. While technically it has now been subdivided, and this is the annexation of a parcel, the fact that it was only done a couple of months ago, the statute also says you cannot subdivide in order to avoid the application of these requirements. That gets into an intent-based question. The proximity in time and the circumstances surrounding this certainly provide the suggestion that the subdivision that took place a couple of months ago was intended to avoid the partial parcel requirement. And I would say that there's reason that could be challenged. That challenge would not be made pursuant to the arbitration process if the annexation were approved and the county still objected to it. A process would require the county to file a lawsuit to declare the annexation void from the outset. That being said, the county could put the city on notice of its position that the annexation failed to satisfy the statutory requirements and was therefore void. It just wouldn't be one of the issues that was taken up under the arbitration process. That is essentially what's before you. You need to decide whether or not to submit a formal objection and engage in the arbitration process. Since there are no more meetings before the deadline, if no special session were called, we would need to have the board probably instruct the county attorney's office to prepare that letter and submit it. And the grounds, we would put that together working with staff.
So I guess going back to the road, if they're granted that, what kind of time frame? When do we have to put that road in or improve that road?
Well,
How much do we have to spend to improve that road?
Really, and I will say, looking at the issue of the road, if I don't know whether or not it would be required under the county's or under the county's existing classification. I believe staff is pointing to that being, it wouldn't be required under the density and number of lots that would be required at that point in time. I mean,
I think basically staff is saying it's something that would be needed but not required. Go ahead, Dave.
Let me see if I can attempt to address this. So when would the road in the intersection be required and who does it? If I'm reviewing this, I'm going to review it regardless whether it's in the city or the county because they're accessing the county road. That road doesn't benefit me as the county right now. So that road is the responsibility of the developer to build, just as if it was anywhere else in the county. It's an internal road. We would treat it much like we do Harry Sosby now. The developer's building that road. They build it to our standards. We inspect it. It goes through the bonding period, the maintenance performance period. At the end of that period, we bring it to the board and ask them to accept it into the maintenance program. That's how I would recommend we treat this, which is kind of where I went with my meeting in October with the developer, that this is going to be treated as a development if it's not in the city. If it's completely annexed, then I'm out of the picture. You're dealing with the city. And as far as the roundabout, that was merely conceptual. I would require an ICE analysis, intersection control analysis, to determine exactly what the best control structure is at that intersection. I didn't do that. It was just a simple conceptual. My experience tells me that it will warrant a roundabout.
So hypothetically, based on what they've presented to us, if we go through arbitration or whatever, it gets turned down, hypothetically, we have no control over a intersection that would be forced to be in the county based on the idea of this little bitty strip staying in the county in order to circumvent or go through a loophole of preventing the island. We would have no control, no leverage, no input, but we would be required to build a $1.5 million roundabout potentially because it is in the county. It just leaves it in the county. It just winds up still being in the county, but we have no control over any of the stipulations like you witnessed tonight, where we were able to leverage a developer to whittle down things.
If we are able to show that in the arbitration, the purpose of the arbitration would be to obtain conditions and negotiated agreement between the city and the county and possibly the developer. They're not technically a party to the arbitration, but obviously a very key voice, if not on the sides, or not, if not directly, maybe on the sides, to bring forth those conditions. If the arbitration panel determines that it doesn't see it as a material burden on the county, or just for whatever reason, they don't have to impose that condition. And then if our own requirements establish that this intersection requires a certain improvement and it is the county's responsibility, that is as if a larger development had been put in the county. I mean, to some extent, and that
Would have to take care.
I'm sorry?
Would have to take care of and maintain it.
If it remains in our, and again, we do have to remember, it depends if it would have been there with the county development, then we would have had to, if it needed a roundabout with the county development, we would have had to maintain it anyway.
Well, to Chris's point though, we could put that, if we have a developer coming before us, we can put it as a stipulation. We can't put it as a stipulation if it's going through the city.
That's true. I will say, we look at this as if they developed under the existing zoning classification. So we would look at it as whatever they could do as it is now. We can't impose stipulations that those come in when they try to rezone something.
The ultimate irony of this is the fact that goes back to my conversation earlier with Splosh is an action of increasing population is causing an expense on the county side.
For all services.
And we have no control over it because of this maneuver loophole to jump over a piece of property, to go through. The reason why I asked you to put this on the screen so people here and at home can see that little hash mark that goes right up the middle is the part that they say, let's just leave that in the county in order to make this thing work and force it in. So based on that,
Motions.
based on that, I have a rather lengthy motion in order to make sure we cross all our Ts and dot all our Is. So my motion tonight is that that we, the board, authorize and direct the county attorney to prepare correspondence to the city of Dawsonville asserting a land use objection pursuant to Georgia's annexation statutes based on a material increase in the burden on the county as a result of the increased density and additional infrastructure demands related to the proposed change in zoning and land use of the property to be annexed. The county attorney is directed to work with staff to include in the letter of support for objection based on the information presented at the hearing and details supporting staff's analysis. In addition to the county attorney shall include notice to the city that the county considers the proposed annexation to violate section 36-36-20 with respect to the subdivision of property in an effort to evade the requirements of annexation of an entire parcel. And that would be my motion, Mr. Chairman.
Now we have a motion from Commissioner Gaines,
Second.
second from Commissioner Satterfield. Discussion. Hearing none, please vote. And that's approved, so carry on. All right, we'll move on to number 7, Legacy Link Addendum number 1, which is the extra money that we would be eligible for in reference to, as Dawn presented to you earlier. So we want to be able to ask for that money before the end of the year. And if we don't wind up needing it, then it can always go back. We want to ask for that. So any other information needed? Motion.
Make a motion to approve to apply for the grant, Legacy Link.
Motion from Commissioner Satterfield. Second. Seconded by Commissioner Gaines. Discussion. Hearing none, please vote. Yep. And that's approved 3-0. No one signed up for public comment in this section.
No, sir.
All right, but we want to do one thing before we get to voting on the executive session or going into executive session. Commissioner Nix, Julie Nix, who was unable to be with us this afternoon, served on the Board of Commissioners for 20 years. We wanted to, this will be her last, would have been her last official meeting. So we wanted to recognize her for the service that she had provided to the citizens of Dawson County over that time frame. So we got some flowers with her, then we had an engraving put on it, and I'm going to ask the clerk to read for us.
The vase says, in recognition of Julie Hughes Nix for her decades of service with the Dawson County Board of Commissioners. And it has the Dawson County logo as well.
Miss Julie, we hope that you are watching, and we want to send you our appreciation for your hard work and dedication over the years, and we will see that you receive this vase with the flowers and stuff, and wish you well in whatever endeavors you do going forward with this being your last meeting, and then hope that if you're listening that you'll come visit us and not have to worry about the pressure of sitting up here. You sit here and just listen. So anything else from any of the board members that you'd like to say in reference to that?
Yeah, I just, again, if Julie's listening, she's, appreciate the years of service. This seat is not an easy seat to be in, as was evident even tonight, that you have to make some tough decisions and look at the big picture. And Julie's been able to do that for many years. So just thank you, Julie, for your service to Dawson County.
And I also thank Julie. I know she worked hard for her district and her people in her district. She listened to them. She met with them on numerous occasions. And like I said, 20 years is I don't know how she done it. I've done it too, and it's tough. But did I make you drop everything, hurt your shoulder? But thank you, Julie, for all you done.
Okay. All right, like I said before, we'll make sure that she receives that. We'll make sure that gets to her, even if someone has to take it to her house, make sure she gets it. All right. Now, we do have need for a brief executive session for litigation, so I'll entertain a motion to go in executive session.
So move.
Motion by Commissioner Gaines.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Satterfield. Discussion. Hearing none, please vote.
Yeah, went,
It worked? Nope.
didn't get credit.
And that is approved 3-0. And with that, there's no vote necessary coming out of executive session, sir. All right, with that, thank you for your attendance. We are adjourned. We'll take about 5 minutes and then we'll go into executive session. Thank you.